Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into something that's absolutely essential for our public services, but man, is it wrapped in confusing rules and some, let's say, questionable practices. We're talking about how the government hires expert consultants.
You know how it is, right? You've got the official rules, all written down in black and white. Then you have the reality on the ground, what it actually takes to get things done. And smack in the middle, well, that's where you find this huge gray area. So let's dive into this fascinating world of government procurement.
Okay, first things first. We got to understand the why. I mean, why would a government agency with all of its resources need to bring in outside help in the first place? It's a totally fair question, right? You'd think they'd have all the expertise they need right there, in-house, but the reality is it's a lot more complicated than that. A huge, huge driver here is the need to navigate these incredibly complex audits. I mean, to make sure they survive that kind of intense scrutiny, they hire consultants. It's also about bringing in specialized skills they just might not have on staff. It's all in the name of making sure things are compliant and, running as efficiently as possible. It's a really critical function. So, we've established the need. Now, let's take a look at the official rulebook for how this is all supposed to work. And well, this is where things start to get messy. See, the thing is, this whole process isn't governed by one single, clear law. Not at all. Instead, agencies have to find their way through this maze of different and sometimes flat-out conflicting legal requirements. It basically sets the stage for one massive headache. And here, you can see the central conflict playing out between two key laws. On one side, you have Republic Act 9184, which is the main procurement law. Its default setting, so to speak, is competitive public bidding. But then on the other side, you have RA 12009, which gives agencies a lot more freedom of choice. The crucial difference between them? It often comes down to just one thing: the budget. Under that main procurement law, RA 9184, the magic number is 1 million pesos. If a consultancy service costs more than that, public bidding becomes the standard procedure. All in the name of fairness and transparency. But under RA 1029, the threshold is totally different. If the budget is under 2 million pesos, the whole game changes. Suddenly, the agency has this whole menu of other options, not just public bidding. You can already see how these conflicting numbers create a really confusing landscape to operate in. So what happens when you have a legal landscape that's this confusing? Well, people find ways around the rules. Let's dig into how this confusion leads to some pretty questionable workarounds. When you're faced with conflicting laws and some really tight deadlines, it's no surprise that public agencies often look for alternative methods to hire the experts they need. But are these methods actually legal? That's the real question, isn't it? Okay, so the first common workaround is something called direct contracting. It's super fast, super simple. The agency just identifies a consultant they want, asks them for a proposal, and boom, you bypass that whole competitive process. It sounds efficient, right? But there's a major legal catch. And here it is. The law is really clear. Direct contracting is for buying goods, physical things. A consultancy, on the other hand, is a service. So the source here argues that using this method to hire a consultant is just a fundamental misapplication of the law, period. All right, so what's another workaround? This one's called negotiated procurement, specifically under the highly technical clause. The logic goes like this. The work is so specialized, so niche, that maybe only one or two experts in the whole country could possibly do it. So public bidding would just be pointless. Makes sense on the surface. But again, we hit a snag. The source points out that if you read the law strictly, it really seems like this method is intended for hiring a single individual expert, not an entire consulting company. So when agencies use this to hire a big firm, they might be on some pretty shaky legal ground. So after looking at these two pretty questionable methods, you have to wonder, right? Is there any way to get around a full public bidding that might actually be, legal and compliant? The source suggests there might be one path: small value procurement. But, and this is a really big but, it comes with two massive conditions. First, the consultant has to be an individual, not a firm. And second, the agency can't just pick their favorite person. They actually have to conduct a proper market scan to make sure they're getting a fair price. So far, we've looked at the rules and the workarounds. But our source ends with a final suggestion that isn't just a workaround. No, this is a move that lands us in a deeply, deeply morally gray area. What if, instead of just bending the rules for procuring services, you could change what you're procuring altogether. This is where the recommendation gets truly provocative. So, here it is, the big idea. The source basically floats the concept of bundling the consultancy with other items, like, say, reports or software or training manuals, and then relabeling the entire project as a procurement of goods, not services. If they do that, it could allow the agency to use much simpler, faster procurement methods by, well, essentially disguising the true nature of the contract.
And that brings us to the final critical question that the source poses directly. If you were the one responsible, sitting there on that committee with all the pressure to get things done, would you sign off on this? Is it a clever solution to a bureaucratic nightmare, or is it a step too far? That's something to think about.